Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book After Pearl and Nicholas Bishop Mystery, no other than Mr. Stephen Iwano. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Steven, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Oh, thank you for having me, first of all. As you said, my name is Stephen Iowanu. I am a fiction writer based in Buffalo, New York. Um, After Pearl is the first in the Nicholas Bishop mystery series, and that'll be out May 1st is my pub date. So I'm very excited about that. And Pearl is actually the fourth book I've written. My first book came out about 10 years ago, a book called Muscle Cars, and that's a short story collection. And I tell people it's 17 short stories about guys making bad decisions, and it's only semi autobiographical. My first novel came out a few years ago. It was called Rook. And that was based on the true life story of a man named Al Nussbaum. And he was a avid chess player and an entrepreneur, and occasionally he would tell his wife he was going out of town for business. But Al's real business was robbing banks, and he robbed about about a half dozen of them before his wife or the FBI knew what he was up to. And the book that came out in 2023 is Yesteryear. It's also based on the true life story of another man named Franz Stryker. And people may not know Fran's name, but they know his works because he's the man who created the Lone Ranger and the Green Hornet and Yukon of the Sergeant Preston of the Yukon. And Fran unfortunately sold the rights to the Lone Ranger for $10 before the Lone Ranger exploded into this 90-year money making franchise. So maybe that's why his name's not quite as well known. But my novel is sort of a fictional imagining of how he came up with the Lone Ranger. So it took me 30 years to first get published, but in the last 10 years, I managed to get four books published out there. So it took me a while to get here, but I sure am glad I made it.
Mr. Steven, thank you so much for sharing your talents to the world again. So, what is the central mystery in After Pearl?
Yeah, after Pearl, it's about a private eye, Nicholas Bishop, and Bishop is an alcoholic. And the novel opens. He's lost everything. He's lost his office. He's doesn't have an apartment anymore. He's forced to have taken a job as a hotel detective, which he thinks is the lowest rung on the detective ladder. And the novel opens up with Bishop waking up on the floor of his hotel room after a 5-day bender. He remembers nothing past Saturday morning. There's been two shots fired from his gun, and the police want to talk to him about a missing lounge singer. And the mystery is Bishop has to piece together the last 5 days of his life. And this takes place in 1942. It's after Pearl Harbor. So that's part of where the title comes from. And along the way of trying to piece together the missing days of his life, he stumbles across American Nazis, a crooked politician, a socialite with a cheating husband, and of course, Bishop is struggling with his own demons and trying to stay sober. And um, whether he does drink again is part of the mystery, I think, as the novel unfolds.
Yes, a mystery. So, what does Nicholas Bishop become involved in the case?
Yeah, a lot of it is dealing with his own demons. As he investigates those missing 5 days, he learns how he behaved during that blackout, and it's not flattering. Um, and he learns a lot about himself and his behavior and realizes how much he has lost. And along the way, as I said, he stumbles across these Nazis, and he's trying to figure out what they're up to and how it all ties together with this lounge singer who was last seen leaving the nightclub with Bishop, um, and later she turns up. in fact, murdered. So the bishop is learning a lot about himself as well as solving these crimes.
So, what key events drive the plot forward?
One of the key events is him. It happens quite early on, but his secretary, who he had to fire, or she says she quit, is a character named Gia Alessi, and she is a very tough, strong female character, and she has aspirations to be a private eye herself. And when Bishop goes to her for help. She agrees to become her driver because he can't find his car. Um, and she becomes his partner um, in every sense of the word. There's always been a romantic interest between the two, and now they're equals on the professional level. So Gia is really the person that kind of acts as Bishop's moral compass. In a lot of ways, she's the better detective, and she's really the first catalyst that gets the novel going. After those two are on the case, the clues are gradually revealed, and hopefully it all comes together at the end the way I intended it to.
So, Mr. Steven, are there any major twists or surprises in the story?
There's a several of them. This is a noir mystery, so I'm trying to pay homage to the greats, Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler. So I'm writing in that style, and so with noir, there's all sorts of um, betrayals and twists and turns, and so I try to incorporate those in the novel. I don't want to reveal too much for in terms of spoilers, but I do hope it keeps people guessing till the end.
Certainly. So, how does the mystery unfold? Gradually or through sudden revelations?
I would say gradually, because it's tough, right? Solving a mystery is tough, but it's even tougher when you don't remember the last 5 days of your life and you're struggling to stay sober. And one of the key elements about Bishop's character is that he was hit by a taxi and his foot was crushed. So about right after Pearl Harbor, and so he is in physical pain in a lot of the novel, and he walks with a cane, and he's got a lot of demons that he is dealing with, and because of that, the novel unfolds. I think as Bishop learns about what happened over those 5 days, it leaves him clues to follow. So it was kind of very interesting to write, and hopefully it's going to be interesting to read.
Certainly. Looking forward to it. And what are Nicholas Bishop's defining personality traits?
Well, that's interesting. That's a good question. He is not well liked. His nickname is Nicky the Weasel, and they call him that because he really doesn't have a moral compass. He really doesn't have this code that you see in so much of crime fiction. He's really a struggling character in many ways. Um, and so he's not well liked. He runs up bar tabs and skips out on them. He makes drunken, sloppy passes at friends' wives. He gets into fights when he's intoxicated. And so he's not very well liked in the detective community. He doesn't have many friends. Um, he's very much a loner, except for Gia and a few of his close friends, some drinking buddies, as well as a World War I vet who suffers from PTSD that helps Bishop out. So he's a very flawed character, and you think, well, how? And no one wants to read about this guy. But I tried to make him funny because humor kind of opens up people and draws them in. And I also try to explain with his backstory of how he ended up like this, and to garner sympathy for the character, at least so you find him interesting, so you keep turning the pages.
How does Bishop's past influence his approach to solving the mystery?
Yeah, by all accounts, he before his drinking became uncontrollable, um, he was a pretty good detective. And as you see him sober up and stay sober, even though it's a battle on every page, you start seeing his powers of observation sharpen. You start seeing his hands steady when he holds a gun or picks a lock. So you start seeing as he becomes more healthy and more in control of his drinking, you start seeing the old bishop. And at one point, he's cleaned up. He's in a fresh suit. He's shaved, and he looks in the mirror, and he thinks he's somebody is wearing his clothes. He's getting back to what he was in the mystery, and before the mystery begins, before the action of the novel begins. And so the change that Nicholas goes through as a main character is evolving back to what he used to be before the drinking got the best of him. So it's kind of an interesting play on character development. We think of characters moving forward, but Bishop's just trying to get back to where he was by getting Gia back, by getting his detective agency back, by finding his car. So it's kind of an interesting twist on that character development.
Who are the main supporting characters and how do they contribute to the story, Mr.
Yeah,
Steven?
I mentioned Gia, who's very much his equal and counterpart, and she is really the really holding Bishop together. The other person is involved is Bishop does some work for an attorney, Ira. They call him Fat Ira. He's over 300 pounds, but he's a good character with a big heart. And he's running afoul with some of the local Nazis in town, and Bishop is trying to help him out in that regard. Um, and so he is a supporting character as well. And then I'd say Benny the Junk Man. That's the World War I vet with PTSD. He's kind of Bishop's eyes and ears on the street because Bishop has, walks the cane and can't get around. And Benny is inconspicuous. He's just a junk man pushing a cart, finding things to sell and pawn, and no one pays attention to the junk man on the corner. But he's also, while he is doing that, he is also keeping his eyes and ears open for Bishop. So those three characters, Gia, Fat Ira, and Benny, are really the core and the support system that Bishop has in this novel.
So, Mr. Steven, what are the major themes explored in After Pearl?
A lot of it obviously is struggling with substance abuse, and it's not a whitewashed depiction of drinking that you often see, especially with private eyes. Um, there's consequences to Bishop's actions that you don't really see in a lot of crime fiction. So if he drinks that bottle of bourbon, there's going to be physical effects. There's going to be personal effects. There's going to be consequences to his actions. So that's a theme. It's not a whitewash of alcoholism by any means. The other theme is quite relevant even today. Battling fascism, battling Nazis. Unfortunately, it's just as relevant now, it seems, as it was when this novel takes place. So that is being explored. And then at the heart of it, it's really, I just wanted to write a good mystery. I just wanted to tell a good story and keep readers turning the pages. And at the end, when they close the book, hopefully they want more. And that will, be the next novel in the series.
Definitely. Next series. So, how does the book portray justice and morality?
Well, that's interesting. Since Nicky the Weasel is not the most moral character, I mean, he will, for instance, he gets the drop on one of the gangsters, and of course, he takes the weapon away, but he also takes his wallet, but not to keep for himself. He throws it in the junk man's cart, and he says the gangster says, "Well, you're robbing me," and he goes, "Well, think of it as a donation to a war veteran." So Bishop, for all his flaws, he has a good heart, and he sticks up for his friends and looks out for his friends. And I think that is one of the themes in the book, and one of the redeeming qualities of Bishop is that he does support his friends and tries to protect them, even if it's telling Benny, "Hey, here's some money for helping me. Make sure you go and eat something." When Bishop doesn't do that for himself. So I think friendship is really a theme and an idea that is explored in this. Um, as far as justice goes, it's a noir novel, so Bishop cuts a lot of corners. He breaks his own laws along the way, um, but at the end, he is trying to do the right thing, and solve the crime, bring the murderers to justice, and foil the Nazis' plots. So um, it's and at the end, he does bring in the police to make the arrest. So um, Bishop is an interesting, shadowy character that's struggling morally. It seems like on every page, but at the end, he's doing the right thing.
So, Mr. Steven, what would be your advice for those people out there who want to write their own novel?
Well, I guess the first thing I would say, and none of this is going to be, original and nothing they probably haven't heard before, but you really have to read everything you can get your hands on, and read critically, not just for enjoyment. If you read a paragraph and you think, "Wow, that was a great paragraph," stop and figure out how did that author make it great. What was it about? Was it word choice? Was it the sentence structure? Was it the imagery? What was it about it? What made that great? And do the opposite when you read something that you go, "How did that get published? That's the worst thing I ever read." Um, do the same type of analysis. What made it miss the mark? Were the characters not developed? Where could they have been developed? How would you have done it differently and made it better? So read everything, read critically, write every day. No one has to read it, but write every day, preferably at the same time, at the same space, um, same spot in your house, if at all possible. Um, and treat it like a second job. Treat it like a job. Show up every day and put the work in. And then the third thing I would say is be patient. It took me, as I said in the top of the show, it took me 30 years from when decided I wanted to be a writer until I was traditionally published and got my short story collection published. I don't recommend waiting 30 years. But, looking back, looking at the old manuscripts, I wasn't a good writer for those 30 years. I was learning my craft, I was trying to get better at it. But I did not quit, and I hung in there until things started to click. But that takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of swallowing of pride. Um,
Definitely.
but like I said, you know what? You're doing the work. It's a solo occupation while you're actually putting the words on the page. No one has to read it until you're ready to show it. It's but you have to put the time in.
Yes, patience is virtue, people. So if you have the passion to write, write, and share to the world and stop procrastinating. So, Mr. Steven, what will be your short term and long term goals in writing?
Well, my short-term goal is to get after Pearl launch. So this is really kicking off kind of like the marketing campaign. So again, thank you for having me on. Pearl is available for pre-order now, and then it'll be available worldwide May 1st of this year. And then the second in the Nicholas Bishop series is already completed. It's called The Falling Woman. And I'll start, working with my editor at the publisher Santa Fe Writers Project um, on that starting very soon, and that has a pub date of spring 2027 already, and that'll be here before I know it. So those are my immediate short-term goals. I think there's hopefully there'll be a third Nicholas Bishop story. I've already started notes on that and putting some pen to paper with that. And then really my long-term goal is, just keep this. production and output going, right? It'll be 4 books in 10 years that will be published, and I just need to keep that going, keeping my focus, keeping my discipline. So, the next 10 years, hopefully there'll be 4 more books. And so that's my long-term goal, is to keep creating, keep grinding, and keep producing publishable work.
Good luck to your goals, Mr.
Thank you.
Steven, and you are most welcome to come back and promote all these coming books of yours.
Thank you.
So, in After Pearl, what role does dialogue play in advancing the mystery?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really, like I said, this is a noir mystery written in the spirit of Chandler and Hammett. And, the characteristics, of course, of that is really kind of like machine gun fire, staccato dialogue. So a lot of information is delivered in that fashion, and delivered very quickly. So a lot of the plot is moved forward through conversation. um, and it was great fun to write that type of style of dialogue. As I said, Bishop is like a lot of the classic PIs. He's funny, and he has a lot of one-liners and an interesting take on the world, and that really comes through. And I think that not only moves the plot forward, but dialogue also reveals character. And I think a lot of that is revealed with Bishop's humorous one-liners, because it's not only revealing what he's thinking, but it's also, if you pay attention, how is he using that humor? Is he using it as a shield? Is he using it to deflect? Is he use it to be in engaging, or and likable? So that comes through in those funny quips and one-liners that he has as well. So dialogue is an important part of this book, for sure.
Certainly. So, Mr. Steven, before we wrap up our discussion, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101, and its fifth season, Two People, with my co host, one of the specialty chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto, Food 101. Please do listen to our latest episode. We talk about no, we read our letter senders all over the world. So, Mr. Steven, does the ending provide a satisfying resolution, or does it leave room for future mysteries?
Yeah, I always think that's a good question too. I always think of Mickey Spillane's famous quote, and I'm not going to get it word for word, but he says, "You sell the book on the first page, and you sell the next book on the last page." So I had that in mind. Um, so the resolution to the mystery and After Pearl is resolved, but there is certainly a lot of loose ends about Bishop's life, about some of the characters that have been in his life that have left him. There is room for kind of a tease to the second book, The Falling Woman. So yeah, there's definitely room for another mystery, and I hope I lured them through. And just think about Mickey Spillane for a minute. There was another quote of his that I thought of, and it actually worked in this novel. This might be a good tip to people writing mysteries out there. Spillane said, "If you ever get stuck, just have a guy come through the door with a gun." And I got stuck. I got stuck in the middle of the book. I had Bishop alone in his hotel room. I go, "Well, what's going to happen now? I don't know." It's like, well, here comes a guy with a gun through the door. And you know what? Spillane was right. It got me going again. It got the uh, moving forward. Um, and so that was a great tip that was probably given 50, 60 years ago, that I was able to actually use on this. So thanks, Mick.
Mr. Steven Iwano, thank you so much for sharing your novels to the world.
Thank
We,
you.
we are more looking for more empowering novels to come. So can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Yeah, thank you. And to learn more about my books and myself, my website is www.sgeowano. You can see my name on the screen.com, and everything you could possibly want to know about me is there. So check it out. The most important page on that website is the last page. It's the contact page. I love hearing from readers, so feel free to reach out to me. I answer all of them.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Steven Iwanam because if you support him, more series of novels to come. So, Mr. Steven, thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you so much.
More to come, people. See you soon. So you can watch now our live episode, Mr. Steven. Just search for my social media, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, X, and